Hi everyone, this is Mateo Vigal, Head of Content at TOC Worldwide, and I'm joined here by Ann Ong Lopez, Head of Investments at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Hi Ann, how are you?
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mateo.
Thank you for joining us. And for those of you who don't know, Ann just participated at a very interesting session at TOC Asia this morning about investment for the port sector. And it got me thinking, so I just wanted to ask you a few more questions. Three short questions that I want to ask you. The first one is, when you talked about funding schemes for ports, could you maybe elaborate a little bit on those, what the available funding schemes are from the AIIB for the port sector?
Yeah, thank you, Mateo. With regards to Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, one thing that is nice is that we have the sovereign business as well as the non-sovereign back financing business under one roof, meaning that we could provide loans to both private sector as well as to the government.
Okay.
One scheme is loans, but we could also provide equity, whether on an indirect basis, on a non-controlling ownership basis. We can also provide sovereign guarantees to, especially in situations where there are fragile contexts, we could provide guarantees as well.
Oh, that's really good. So basically, you are helping ports to sort of develop their own infrastructure projects. I wanted to ask you also, what is the criteria, in order for you guys to provide those guarantees and those loans, what criteria should a port meet in order to be eligible?
Correct. So we are guided by, first, the port project has to be bankable. Bankable in the sense that it should be able to provide economic internal rates of return. Second is, where possible, the operations and maintenance should be able to be covered by the revenues that will be generated by the loan, so that there is some financial sustainability. So having that in a feasibility study as well as detailed engineering design to showcase could help us tell our investment committee that the project is bankable. But another thing to note is that AIIB provides a high focus on environmental and social standards. The port has to demonstrate, or at least the port will be assessed based on environmental and social impact assessments, and there would be some mitigation plans that should be implemented throughout the project implementation in ways that mitigates any environmental and social risk associated with port construction as well as port expansion.
Yeah, because you want to know that the port will continue to be operational in the future, and I guess it makes it easier to measure the return on investment.
Right. So maybe one thing to note about ports, or at least in general infrastructure projects, is that multilateral development banks such as AIIB focus a lot on sustainability. And this is sustainability with regards to environmental and social aspects, but also on the economic sustainability, and especially if we're providing non-sovereign back financing, financial sustainability of infrastructure projects such as a port.
Yeah, no, it really makes sense. And lastly, I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit more on those 4 pillars that you touched upon during your presentation, that sort of guide the different activities that the AIIB is doing.
Correct. So AIIB has 4 thematic priorities underpinned by our corporate strategy. So the first one is digital infrastructure. We provide support to infrastructure that accommodates technology that would support efficiency as well as productivity gains of port infrastructure, for example. I mean, port infrastructure these days, there is many of the port activities have electrification of the crane equipment, port optimization or port automation. These are things that AIIB would be keen to finance. The second, with respect to green infrastructure, we support projects that support climate mitigation as well as climate adaptation that enables meeting the Paris Agreement targets as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development goals. As I mentioned a while ago, in fact, AIIB's approvals, 30% of them, or sorry, 60% of them are already met the green infrastructure targets.
Oh, that's great.
We also support cross-border connectivity and regional cooperation. As we know, ports is a good target because it is an enabler of exports as well as imports as a channel
of course.
between countries.
Yeah, you manage to connect different countries as
Correct,
well.
correct. And then finally, we also want to mobilize private capital. So there's a lot of players in the port sector, and it's not only the MDBs who are playing, there are also the private sector. So port infrastructure investments, whether greenfield or brownfield, MDBs just play a small role, and hopefully with AIIB financing, it could signify to the market that the project is bankable and we could crowd in private sector investments.
Well, that's really interesting, and I like the very almost scientific approach that you have, because everything is measurable, everything is clear, and you clearly know where you guys are going. Well, guys, so if you want to get some funding for your projects, for developing your infrastructure as a port, go to the AIIB and make sure to do your homework so your project is bankable. Thank you very much. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.